Hi everybody. Today my students are going to reinforce the simple present tense, which is one of the most basic and most used tenses in English as a second language. Alright, so let's begin. So first of all, we need to understand the class objective, alright? And that is to have students understand when do we use the simple present tense. So basically we use the simple present to talk or write about things we do frequently, such as daily routines or habits. Even if our daily routines are very redundant and repetitive, there are always new tasks or activities that could come along depending on the age of the person, of the learner in this case, and of course the time of when they're performing the tasks. Okay? So first of all, we need to understand what is the structure of the simple present. The simple present can be written or spoken as a positive, negative statement, and even a question. So here we could clearly appreciate the structure for the positive, which includes the subject, the verb. Then we have the negative, which is the subject. Depending on the subject, we are going to use don't and doesn't. That depends if it's first person or third person, singular or plural. And finally, we have the auxiliary do, does, for the question form, the subject, and the verb. So here we could see some examples of the structure. For example, in affirmative statements, we have Rohan plays tennis. Here we could see the subject, the first form of the verb, all right? Because the first person, the subject, because the subject is male, in this case we add an S to the end of the verb, okay? So we put Rohan plays tennis. Now, depending on the verb, there are some situations where we put the S and others where we put the ES, but the students already know these. For negative, we put the subject, do, does, plus not, which makes the sentence negative. The verb, it remains the same, okay? We don't add the S or the ES. And finally, the subject. So Rohan does not play tennis. And finally, we're using the auxiliaries do and does, depending on the subject, the first of the verb, which is its natural, basic manner of the verb, and the object. For example, because it's a male, we're considering the pronoun he. So, does Rohan play tennis? Okay, if it were a group of people, it would be, do they play tennis? So that really depends on the subject. Now let's move on to the vocabulary part. I have thought about this very cool daily routines fidget spinner game. I think that students first need to scan visually what they're going to learn before just memorizing a list of vocabulary words, which can become very dull at times. So here what they do is they have by the way, this activity can be applied for students of Básica Elemental, Básica Media, or Básica Superior, or adults. It doesn't matter because we all have daily routines. So we're not exempt from this activity. Age does not matter in this case. So here I think that everyone is familiar with the fidget spinner that we have all played with eventually at some point of our lives, especially when they became so popular 4 or 5 years ago. So to use this little gadget, first we need to cut a small arrow from a paper or craft foam and stick it onto the fidget spinner as your pointer. You place the fidget spinner in the middle of the vocabulary circle that you can use here as a printout. And then you spin it and say the word quickly to a partner and also write it down, okay? And with your partner can give you the washback, the positive washback, or your partner could also tell you, look, you misspelled this, or you could say this in a different way because of pronunciation or intonation. So it's always best to work with a partner, or if you want, you can work individually or with your teacher. This task can take 10 minutes as each student takes turns. So once the student becomes familiarized with the different daily routines or habits, then they have to work on this individual activity. All right. Okay, so now the student should create a weekly planner that includes the days of the week, the hours of the day, a written explanation of the daily routine using the structure. Finally, they should include an illustration of them fulfilling the routine. This must be presented to the class. So here I have a little template that they could use, or they could create their own. Basically, depending on the day, they have to write down incomplete sentences using the correct grammar tenses and the auxiliaries and negative tenses of their daily routines according to the week. It could be a school week, it could be a vacation week, it could be a work week, it could be a week that you are on in the beach. It doesn't matter, because no matter what you're doing or where you are or the season of the year, there's always something to do. You're always going to wake up and then do something else. All right, so I have decided to have the students break this down by hours, okay? And then in the spaces, they're going to have to write down which are the activities that they're going to do by using the simple present tense. And finally, they can also include an illustration, okay? Of course, before having them realize or fulfill this activity, they need to know how they're going to be graded. So that's why we have a rubric, okay? So this rubric has the following categories, or criteria, as we could call them. The complete sentence, the top score will be 3. The sentence was complete and it made sense. The correct verb, the verb was the best choice to show the meaning that the verb was being used correctly. The present tense, the writer used the simple present formula and wrote the verb correctly. Comments, the student posted 2 or more comments. The comments were thoughtful, understandable, and appropriate. What I mean by comments in this part is what they wrote about their daily routines, okay? And also, they could share their daily routines and explain this to the class. And their participation, the feedback, the washback that they give their classmates can also be considered in this criteria. And finally, every assignment, every task has to work with a deadline. So the students know when to turn it in. So the student met the deadlines for posting and commenting. So basically, that would be it for the presentation of the simple present tense and how I would assess it in class. As you heard, I would work on this using visual aids. I would also use writing material. Of course, the students are going to have to speak, interact amongst the teachers, also going to listen to them. And I thought that the best apply the simple present tense into this activity was by daily routines or habits, because it's what we do every day. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for your time. Have a great week. Bye.